So we have seen this really dumb discussion before in previous videos. Which game is better, WarFrame or Destiny? Yeah, but didn't Destiny 1 die at launch? Cause you know, WarFrame kinda still existed. Wait, how are we comparing something that costs $60 to something that is free to play? Except now, a fair portion of Destiny 2 is free to play. So I think this is actually a good time to really dive deep and have a good discussion about which game is better, whether they are actually better, or whether or not they're just two sides of a pretty similar coin. So in this video, I'm going to be giving 5 points where Destiny shits all over WarFrame, then 5 points where WarFrame shits all over Destiny, and then a couple of other things that I've noticed where they kind of do better than each other, but in different ways. Let's get into it. Alright, so I'm gonna start off with Destiny 2. What does Destiny do that is way better than what exists in WarFrame? We'll first start off with raids, and obviously the first thing that's great about raids in Destiny 2 and Destiny 1 as well is that they actually exist. There are no raids in WarFrame at the present moment. DE a while ago actually just straight up deleted the raids, and there are a lot of people who are a bit miffed about that. So obviously, first thing, the raids actually exist. Secondly, the raids, at least the ones that I was able to play, they have been very grand in their scale. For example, you take the Vault of Glass, you take Crota's End, King's Fall, these raids rather, huge endeavors, massive levels, first off, with lots of things that you need to do in order to complete the level, which requires a lot of teamwork. That's really good. And also just the amount of levels between your starting position and your final objective. Yes, it could be a little bit long, but that's the gig, okay? So I feel like the scale of these raids, and I can't really speak to the new ones since King's Fall, which was obviously a long time ago. I did try to play the ones that exist at the moment, but I have not been so lucky as to complete them. Although I was able to complete Last Wish. That one was quite fun too, and the amount of things you need to do is pretty exciting. So the raids are really good in Destiny 2. The second thing that's really good, at least to me, what I think is really good, is the gun to sword switching. This is specifically between guns and swords, but you could probably extrapolate it to just weapon holstering in general. It's very snappy. In WarFrame, holstering a weapon without using something like speed holsters tends to take a while. It may be 1 or 2 seconds, but that's long enough for it to be considered a while. In Destiny, it's actually really quick. So one thing I like to always say is, an experience that I always like to refer to when it comes to holstering your weapon in Destiny is I can shoot an arrow and then immediately jump to my sword. In WarFrame, I have to wait for myself to draw the next arrow before I can jump to my sword, and I think that is not particularly good holstering speeds for a weapon, for a game rather, as fast-paced as Destiny 2 or WarFrame. So I think Destiny 2's got it the right way by being able to shoot an arrow, and the moment that arrow fires, like the split second afterwards, you can grab out your sword, or you can grab out your rocket launcher, or you can grab out your rifle, depending on what you want to use. So I think that's really good. The next thing is actually a little bit weird. It is going to sound a little bit weird, but arc damage and solar damage are actually meaningful in Destiny 2 and Destiny 1 as well. Essentially, the answer to electric damage and the answer to heat damage are actually meaningful. In WarFrame, they're not that great. Electric damage is kind of useless, and heat damage at the present moment, because apparently with the Ember rework there's going to be some changes to make heat damage a lot more useful, but at the present moment, heat damage is also quite useless. Also, things that interact in a similar fashion to how the status procs of electric damage and heat damage in WarFrame, things that work in a similar way to that are actually useful in Destiny 2. For example, Chain Lightning, which is actually the electric proc for WarFrame, Chain lightning exists in the Trinity Ghoul. The Trinity Ghoul is, I guess, Destiny 2's answer to Cerberus Prime, with a lot of electric proc. Chain lightning from Trinity Ghoul is super duper good. It actually clears entire rooms, which makes it really, really powerful. In a similar way, any lightning web, arc web damage spread from arc grenades that, first off, A, do a lot of damage because that seems to be the nature of a grenade, but secondly, the chain lightning from these arc grenades also happen to do a lot of damage. So they are actually really, really useful. So when I see lightning on the field, I don't just think meaningless. I actually think, wow, that's pretty good. In a similar fashion, solar grenades are really, really good. A lot of subclasses in Destiny 2 have access to the solar grenade. It is essentially the great big sunball grenade that does damage over time for whoever decides to hang around in that sunball. In much the same way that people basically suffer heat procs in WarFrame, solar grenade does a damage over time, and that damage over time is actually meaningful. It can kill everything, and depending on what you're using, you could potentially do a lot of damage using solar grenades. So I actually prefer using solar grenades whenever I'm playing a solar subclass. In this case, because I only play warlocks these days, if I ever play Dawnblade or the opposite of Dawnblade, whatever that's called, Ward of Dawn, or whatever the hell it is, you know what I mean, flying sword or stabby sword, I always use solar grenades. That's just me. But it just means that all elemental damage in Destiny 2 does have its place. Now granted, there's only 3 elements to choose from: Void, Solar, Arc. So you could argue that, well, you pick 3 elements from Warframe and they're useful. Corrosive, magnetic, not magnetic, corrosive, viral, radiation. They're all useful as well. Maybe, but just the fact that in Destiny 2, they actually keep it simple enough where elemental damage is useful, it just is. I think that's a really, really good thing, as opposed to Warframe, where we do have a bunch of elements and even physical damage types that are just completely and utterly useless. They're paperweight at this point. The fourth thing that I think is really good from Destiny 2 is the open world. Obviously, Destiny 2 prides itself on having a lot of open worlds. Same with Destiny 1. Right now, they have started to reintroduce some old worlds from Destiny 1, namely the Moon. Literal carbon copy plus some extra bits and pieces because it's from Destiny 2, and because it's Shadowkeep, we might as well open up an extra bit. So that's one thing that I've noticed. I kind of feel, just side note, I kind of feel like Shadowkeep was a little bit overpriced when one of the things that they're adding is literally a carbon copy of the Moon. Whatever, that's okay. So the open worlds in Warframe, there's only of which there's only 2. They're not as eventful as the open worlds are in Destiny 2. You pick any one of them: Nessus, the EDC on Earth, the Moon, the Tangled Shore, even the Lost City, the Awoken one. No matter where you go, there is always stuff to do and people to kill, whereas in the Plains of Eidolon, you could potentially go quite a fair while before you come across a very tiny regiment of Grineer. In the Orb Valis, you can go quite a while before you come across a very tiny regiment of Corpus. So the population of these open worlds in Destiny 2 is a lot more dense, which I think makes it really, really good. So whilst Warframe does pride itself on having procedurally generated maps, which is really, really good as well, Destiny tried that with the Infinite Forest, but I don't think they really did a good job about that. Still, I think having these open worlds, densely open worlds rather, I think that's actually really, really good, and that is something that makes Destiny a lot more interesting in that regard against Warframe. And also, Warframe doesn't really have a cityscape yet, whereas Destiny 2 kind of has already with the EDC. Granted, everything's a bit rusty, but it's pretty close to a cityscape. There's a church and there's verticality of which you can use. Not a whole lot. I think they could have really built up on that and give us a real cityscape, and I'm hoping one of these days, whether it be Warframe or Destiny, we get a proper cityscape with like buildings that have multiple levels and roads and that kind of stuff. I just want to be able to like hang out on like a perch in a room that's really high up and just be able to like snipe shit or use a bow or something rather, or complete an objective by starting at the bottom, going up all the way to the top. Could be a raid. Anyway, finally, the final thing that Destiny 2 obviously does better than Warframe, and this is really just because it exists as well, PvP. Now, before I continue, don't get me wrong. I don't care about PvP in Destiny 2, and I certainly don't care about PvP in Warframe either, so I'm not going to be comparing it by that. Are they balanced? Don't care. Is it fun? Don't care. Is there a meta that is toxic as hell because it requires everyone to use a shotgun in Destiny 2? I don't know, and I don't care. Are bows effective? Apparently not, which gives me less of a reason to care. Either way, PvP actually exists in Destiny 2. It does not exist in Warframe. The Conclave, I guess, by definition exists, but it doesn't exist, let's be real here. So, those are the things that I think Destiny does way better than Warframe. Let's now go and have a look at what Warframe does that is way better than Destiny 2. Alright, let's have a look at what Destiny 2 does worse than Warframe. So let's have a look at what Warframe does better than Destiny 2. Okay, so the first thing that Warframe does that's just heaps better than Destiny 2 is the number of classes that you can choose from. No matter how you want to put it, Destiny 2 just does not have nearly as many. For those who don't know, there are Hunters, Warlocks, Titans, that's 3 classes. Okay, Warframes, there are 41 of them. So there's 41 different classes to choose from, and that's before we talk about primes. Now, if you want to be super duper generous to Destiny 2, for every Hunter, Warlock, Titan, there is an Arc, Solar, Void variant to choose from. And you can just choose them on the fly. Great, awesome. That means there's 9 classes to choose from. Let's be even more generous and say that in each class there was also 3 subclasses. So for example, for the Void Warlock, there's the Chaos one, the Hunger one, and the new one, which I don't quite remember at this particular point in time. I can't remember what it is. Either way, there's 3 of them to choose from now, and the new one has a new ultimate ability, which is different to the other 2. So let's just say that they're all different classes as well. That means that there are 27 classes to choose from in Destiny 2. Warframe still has 41. So, no matter how you want to shake it, Warframe has way more classes and way more hilarious things to choose from. Do you want to be super duper fast boy number 1, Vault, or do you want to be super duper fast boy number 2, Goss? But they are very different. I am being facetious, but they are very different. Do you want to be Chroma, the dragon? Or do you want to be Titania, the butterfly? Or do you want to be Oberon, the literal goat? Or do you want to be the best Warframe in the history of Warframe? Mag. That's right. There is no Guardian in Destiny 2, even remotely like Mag. No one as fun, no one that requires as much thought and effort. There is no 5000 IQ Warlock in Destiny 2. And I don't think there is a 5000 IQ Hunter or Titan in Destiny 2. There's just not. But there is the 5000 IQ Mag. And that's the key. Maybe the exception is a Void Warlock that uses Nezarec Zin, because I think that's at least a 1000 IQ build. Anyway, moving on. The next thing, and this is actually very similar, is the variety of weapons. Now, granted, in Destiny 2, there is a giant sea of weapons, each with different names and each functioning slightly differently to each other, and with potentially slightly different models to each other. Great, awesome. There's just one problem. Essentially, all the rifles function the same. All the hand cannons more or less function the same. They might have different perks and all that jazz, but it doesn't really matter in the long run. All the shotguns definitely function the same. Some are automatic, some are not so automatic, doesn't matter. But when you're comparing a rifle to another rifle, if you really look at it, one shoots bullets, another shoots bullets, wow. In Warframe though, if you compare one rifle to another rifle, you could be in for a bit of a discussion. For example, the Bratton versus the Boltor. One shoots bullets, another shoots nails. One is a hit scan weapon and another is a projectile weapon. Very interesting. Very interesting. Now, granted, there are some weapons that function very similarly, but they are different in different ways. For example, I don't know, let's say it's Tigris Prime versus Corinth. One is a critical shotgun, one is a status shotgun, one is great, one is overpowered. Okay, they still kind of function the same way, although the Corinth does have a grenade launcher. Yay! Either way, the weapons in Destiny 2 are just not as various as they are in Warframe. And also, in terms of melee weapons, Destiny 2, the Guardians only have access to swords. Whereas Tenno can use whips, shields, gun blades, miniguns, arc guns, miniguns, throwing knives, flamethrowers, and I'm not including Prometheus Lens in this one, and a bow that shoots a grenade that nukes an entire room. If Destiny 2 were to ever give me a lens, we'd be in some crazy times. You could say that, oh well, Le Monarque is really good. You like Le Monarque, right? That's a really fun weapon. It's an exotic weapon, but yes, it's a very fun weapon. The problem is, Le Monarque basically functions as a die cube with gas damage. Anyway, Guardians, just in general, do not have access to all sorts of ordinances that we, the Tenno, have access to. Dems the breaks. Now, the next thing, of course, is leveling up, and this is going to take a little bit of time to explain. Basically, my problem with the leveling system in Destiny 2 is that the power level system, it just encourages, to the point of forcing you to ditch weapons and armor that you like in favor of weapons and armor that you don't like. For example, I am currently hoarding a stack of pulse rifles, scout rifles, shotguns, hand cannons, all with a higher power level to Le Monarque or Trinity Ghoul, or no turning back? No turning back? Yes, no turning back, I think. The kinetic bow. I'm hoarding a bunch of weapons that have a higher power level to that. Without infusing, I am now encouraged, almost to the point of being forced, to use pulse rifles, scout rifles, shotguns, hand cannons, as opposed to my bows. I hate those weapons. I hate using those weapons. I don't like them. I really don't. But because they have a higher power level, I am obligated, more or less, to use them before infusion kicks in. So if I have, so then now I'm also like, oh shit, I need to go get things to infuse them with. Nowadays it's a little bit easier to infuse weapons together. That's good. It used to be stupid back in the day, trying to get etheric spiral or whatever it is. Oh yeah, it kind of made trying to upgrade no turning back just almost impossible sometimes. Anyway, leveling up with the power level, I think it's just absurd, and it also cuts into the fact that I can't do the raid most of the time because I want to use my bow, but I can't use my bow because I have to use a shotgun that has a higher power level. Like, get that away from me. Meanwhile, the Warframe power level system is very simple. Level up your weapon from 0 to 30, and then consider if you want to keep that weapon and use Former on it. Because if you use Former on it, you have to re-level it from 0 to 30. Same idea with Warframes. But now, this system actively encourages you to not just explore the weapon, how you want to build it, how you want it to excel, but instead you're also encouraged to keep the ones that you like. Whereas Destiny 2 is the complete opposite. It's discouraging you from keeping the ones you like. Use the thing that has a higher power level. Whereas with Warframe, use the thing that you like, and if you want to make it stronger, put some Forma into it. Typically, having more Forma in your weapon will yield you a better build. For example, the Paris Prime build, the 5000 IQ Platinum Arrow, the Platinum Arrow build. You can probably achieve it with 5 Forma, but you need 5 Forma, and it will take some time to re-level the weapon from 0 to 30 5 times. Okay? Of course, with this rule, at some point, you kind of start recycling Forma, and then you don't need to do it. 1000 Forma is actually stupid and doesn't need to be used. People do it anyway just to be cool. It's a cool factor. Cool. Now, the next thing should be pretty self-explanatory, but first off, I do need to preface that yes, this is taking a while for it to show up in Warframe, and whilst I'm still very excited for it, it is taking quite a while. And now it's been broken up into 3 parts, and every time DE breaks something up into 3 parts, it usually takes a very long time between part 1 and part 2. For example, Spectres of the Rail, there were 3 parts, and boy oh boy, part 1, then it took like a month or 2, and then part 2, and then it took like a month or 2 later, part 3. Melee 3.0. We've had part 1, it's been 3 months to half a year. We still haven't had part 2, it's probably coming this month. I don't know. Hopefully it does come this month, but either way, part 2 is taking forever. And then part 3, who the bloody hell knows when part 3 is going to show up. Either way, I am of course talking about space battles. Warframe is a sci-fi looter shooter. You jump between planets, fighting enemies on multiple planets. You know what that sounds like? Sounds like Destiny. It does sound like Destiny. You are a guardian fighting multiple enemies across multiple planets, with new planets showing up from time to time, or a moon. Or Nessus, because Nessus is not a planet, I think. It's a moon. I don't know. But there is no news whatsoever and no indication, as far as I can tell, that Bungie are going to be implementing space battles. But we do know that DE is getting there in implementing space battles. Space battles. Okay? That's it. I don't need to say anything else. Space battles, guys! And finally, and I think this has to be really, really stressed here, Warframe has trade. Destiny doesn't have any trade, and that is to the severe detriment of my experience in Destiny 2 and Destiny 1. Trade is really, really good. Not just because these games are looter shooters, I do have to stress that again, but also being able to sell things actually makes it for a pretty healthy economy. Whether it's RuneScape or Warframe or WoW, I guess. Being able to sell things and buy things does make things sensible. So yes, granted, I've completely bypassed a bunch of grind by waiting about 2 weeks for Deathcube Prime to drop massively in price because of how deflation works. And because of how supply and demand works. But I still think this is a good thing, okay? Whereas in Destiny 2, I could be given OEM, one-eyed machine, one-eyed man. It's a Titan helmet, right? It's a Titan helmet, and the problem is I can't use it because I'm a warlock. What do? I can't even, do I shard it? I guess I've just sharded. I'm not going to sit through the campaign and fall asleep just to try and play Titan when I don't like Titans at all. I can't even fuse one-eyed machine or one-eyed man or whatever the hell it's called into my warlock helmets anymore. That's not a thing that you can do anymore. So I don't even have that avenue. So if I'm given something like One-Eyed Man, it's completely useless. So I think trade is really, really good for a game like Destiny 2 and WarFrame. Alright, there's one other thing that's a little bit weird, or actually there's two things that are a little bit weird that like both games kind of do better than each other in different ways. Let's just have a quick look at that before we wrap up the video. So when it comes to things that WarFrame and Destiny 2 do better than each other in, things that are not outright better in one game than the other, the thing that springs to mind is, of course, the energy economy. For Destiny 2, the energy economy is based on ability cooldowns. Your grenades, your melees, your rift if you're a warlock, but it's really a class ability, and your super abilities, they're all based on cooldowns. Whereas in WarFrame, all of your abilities, your first, your second, your third, and fourth abilities, they're all based on energy. So you can spam your abilities in WarFrame as much as you want, provided you have the energy. Whereas in Destiny 2, there's no such thing as energy, but you can't spam your abilities. Now, what I like about the WarFrame system is the ability to spam all of my abilities. It means that I can just snap between each ability, and it also allows me to use a lot of abilities multiple times. For example, one of the strong things about Fracture and Crush for Bag is that you're capable of using Crush twice really, really quickly, and Crush is an ultimate ability. So you're essentially using your ultimate ability twice as your fourth ability. And in the meantime, by using your fourth ability twice, you're not only able to remove 80% of an enemy's armor with the first Fracture and Crush, but you're also able to remove a further 80% of what's left. So you effectively remove 96% of a target's armor, leaving only 4%. And that's really, really strong, because it also means that you could use something like Polarize and completely strip the armor of an enemy. The only way this could exist is by using the energy system, which WarFrame allows. Otherwise, if this were Destiny 2, then I would only be able to use Fracture and Crush once, and then I have to wait quite a long cooldown before I can use Fracture and Crush again. Whereas in Destiny 2, there's no such thing as energy. So you will never come across a mission where you can't use your abilities, outside of special missions, I guess, where the modifier seems to be that you can't use your abilities. But because all of your abilities are based on cooldowns, you will always have access to your abilities, provided you deplete the cooldown. What's sort of bad, I guess, about these systems by themselves, and what I don't particularly like about them, and I'm not entirely sure how we could fix either of these, is that the WarFrame system puts a huge emphasis on things such as Arcane Energize to give you more energy, energy efficiency to reduce the drain of your abilities. It puts a huge emphasis on rage tanks, anyone who's able to generate energy just like that, by getting hit, which kind of seems a little bit counterintuitive if you really think about it, but having this energy system does put a huge emphasis on their strengths, and as well as like flow, I guess, but that doesn't seem to be all that powerful in my opinion. Whereas with the Destiny system, what this seems to put a huge emphasis on is any gear that can provide cooldown reduction. For example, Nezarec Sin. This is why I say that any Void Warlock that uses Nezarec Sin is incredibly good and is easily my favorite kind of Warlock to play. Void Warlock, Nezarec Sin, I can just spam abilities as if I'm playing Warframe, almost. Like it's not a one-to-one correlation, but it's almost there. But that is really the thing, like, Destiny system is better than Warframe's in the sense that you're always going to have energy, i.e. you're always going to be able to use your abilities. Warframe system is better than Destiny's in the sense that you can actually spam abilities and therefore use an ability multiple times to have an additional effect that could be really, really good. So you may be wondering what my final conclusion is. Ultimately, I think Destiny and Warframe are on somewhat equal footing, even though they are doing things better than each other in different ways. So hopefully, as both of these games continue to exist, and as both of these games continue to be developed on, that Bungie and D can learn from each other. Specifically, D should probably learn from Bungie on how to produce a good raid, and Bungie should learn from D how to produce an actual trading post, how to actually implement trade so that gameplay isn't as stagnant and we don't have these random soft caps that exist in the game. Anyway, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. Do you agree with any of my assessments? Do you disagree with anything that I've said? Let me know. Otherwise, if you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Warframe and Destiny content, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. This is Darling Harbour.